mistakes we make. I'm going to show you just this portion of the bag. I had an idea for a bag, for a, just another different craft bag, but I didn't make a mock-up of it. I kind of went with what was in my head as I did it. The idea was good, and I'll show you some of the mistakes that I made along the way. But this was supposed to be a nice little, just a little craft bag. Had pocket there to put stuff in, keys, change. Little slip pocket here for you to put in your cell phone or whatever you wanted. And then another slip pocket in the back as well. And then the interior was just the plain bag itself. No pockets or anything, but it has magnetic snaps. Here's the problem. When I put it together to sew it, I put it in the wrong order. So that when I turned it out, it would be wrong. I can go back and fix that. I can rip this thing totally back and fix it, but I'm not gonna. So yeah, the other thing is the way that I had placed the zipper with the owls makes it look kind of crooked. And I'm pretty sure that's the way that the owls are because the measurements on each side are the same. From here to bottom. But that's one of the mistakes that I have made in the past. And I thought, well, I've been doing this for a long time. It'll be fine, no problems. I think you can see where it kind of is buckling up in here. And that has to do with the way that I had put these in the wrong order. So that when I turned it out, it didn't turn out correctly. So, and I know that. Just from experience. I have long made many a purse for myself that I know some of those handbag techniques. Let's just put it that way. But I was like, oh, let's just wing it. I'm sitting here, got nothing to do. Let me see if this works out the way I think it will. Did, with the exception of putting it in the wrong order. If I had, it would probably be just perfect, great little purse to use, to go shopping or whatever, run errands, that kind of thing. But I tell you this because in the past, I have always taken just regular, like computer sheet paper, or even 11 by 14, no, 8.5 by 14. 11. Whew. That would be a crazy size sheet. I have taken some of the sheets that have been 8.5 by 14 inches and in my head designed my purse patterns and then put them on paper with pencil so that if I needed to erase it, whatnot, including the seam allowance that I've put in there. If I put any pockets, I've done that in the past. And then use that as a pattern guide for the bag that I was making. I didn't do that this time. So it was a mistake. So I thought what I would do, and I am going to do this over the next couple of minutes. I'm going to give you an idea of how I have done this in the past for handbags. It could be for anything. It could be, maybe you're trying to decide how to make a certain pot holder and you have in your head how you want the pot holder to be. But, I love making handbags. And I've always loved making handbags, coin bags, wallets, you name it, some of those kind of things. And as a matter of fact, I will show you some of the things I have made. So this first part, I'm just going to show you some of my bag progression. This bag was one of those bags that everybody at the time was making, and you still see a lot of these bags on Etsy being sold, and these are just some quilted little, they sometimes call them tote bags, sometimes they call them purses, and this one called for, you know, just some handles. And then on the inside, I decided that with this bag, wanted a couple of slip pockets, so there are some slip pockets in here. And then this pocket, I don't know what possessed me to do this, but it's like a hidden slip pocket that has a little lip over it. So you have to go into it that way. And of course, I had a couple of round pieces, so I made that lovely little, what do you call those? Man, words escape me. It's where you take the round fabric and you sew it around, you pull it tight. Yo-yos. So I'd taken a yo-yo, and then for the button, because this one actually called for this type of closure, so that it could just go around the whole button. The yo-yo included. And that was one of the very first bags I ever made. And that kind of created a monster in me to where I really liked making a lot of bags. So along the way, I began experimenting and making bags. The next thing is I have a beautiful sewing machine for Nina, and this was a in the hoop pattern. So it is in the hoop. You have two pockets here, and this one has card slots in it. You can't see because I chose a very dark fabric, but there are card slots. There is, you know, for 6 or 7 cards. And then there is the bottom part that is for whatever you want to put into it. The back has a flap that if you were carrying a iPad, you could slip your iPad into it. And yeah, I use this bag quite frequently. Like when I go to the casino, I generally like to take this bag because I can slip in a cake of yarn in that back pocket. Sometimes I take my iPad, you know, for on the bus, that kind of thing. From there, I discovered that there were these lovely locks. And of course, this bag, I would say is not well structured, and there's a issue with this clasp on it, so it probably need to change out the clasp on the handle. But I found that there were these nice little button locks that you could use, where you could close the purse and then turn it, and it would be closed and locked. So, of course, this is one of my favorite fabrics, so I chose to use that. As you can see, this flops down, so I didn't really give this place here where it's at a lot of structure, and probably should have learned some things with it. Of course, there are card slots in here, cord slots and card slots, enough for 6 cards. Well, you can put more than 6 in there, but you know, 6 if you only want to put in. And then a little area for your cash. And that was good. And then, of course, at the time I had a smaller cell phone, so that back pocket I could put my cell phone in. This was something that I had designed in my own head. Then I started learning about, I was doing a lot of free motion quilting. And so I think it's so easy. So easy. She had done I can't remember what she called it, but basically it was a pouch, carry pouch. And I was learning to do free motion quilting on satin. So this was my first attempt with the free motion quilting on satin. Turned it into a bag using that structure. Basically, it just has a slip pocket, and you know, this was meant for just an evening out, whatnot. Nice little handle. And then from there, I had started, like I said, I was doing a lot of practicing of free motion quilting. So this bag came along, and this is satin on the front. The rest of this is just regular cotton, quilting cotton. Nice big pocket on the back. On the inside, there are no pockets, but it does have the zipper closure on the top. Double zipper. It's designed so they can open really wide. So this one, like I said, I use this a lot. If I'm going somewhere and I know I'm going to have a lot of sitting and waiting, I've taken it to the casino. And from there I decided, well, I needed a little purse to hold my cards and credit cards and those kind of things. So I just made a little pouch out of that. Sewn in handle. There is a pocket for cash or whatever. A nice little bit of a roomy pocket for other things. And then this has a 3-pocket card slot in it. Well, I guess you'd say 4 because you could put some more cards in there as well. And so that became something I carried around, or you could use it, you know, for makeup. And these two kind of went together, so, you know, they were a set. From there, I got on a little bit of a kick with different wallets. And of course, I was still practicing my free motion quilting. And this was a piece of satin quilting that I had. And so I decided to turn it into a wallet. Of course, there are some issues with it. One of it, and there is a slot here for cash. And then there are 3 pockets for the cards. And then there is a zippered area here for whatever. And my problem with that is I had put the zipper facing the left instead of the right when it closes. That's the only problem with it. Other than that, it's a nice little wallet, magnetic closure on it. I still use it. Just fun wallet. And from there, I had, that's where you are. Money clip. I was given this money clip, and I was wondering where it went to. Now I know. But this is just a plain little piece of fabric I had left over. And was deciding how to use it. This is batik that I'd gotten. And basically it's just 2 slots. And then it just snaps closed. And I use this frequently too when I go somewhere. So it's kind of fun. From there, I had Coco Pelli. So I used that to create a different type of wallet. And basically the wallet is Coco Pelli on the outside, on the inside with 2 pockets. Pocket here, pocket here. They're both the size that you could put cash in them. Nowadays, I generally keep pens in it. My sucralose for when I'm out somewhere, those kind of things. And then anything that I need to slip into there. Sometimes I take cash with me, my ID, and I just want to carry something small. So that's what I use for that. From there came this purse. And this purse was a little bit on the different side. It had some unfinished things on the inside, which seams. And that was because once I got it finished, I realized I forgot to put the binding around this. I was like, I'm not going back in to do it. I could go back in and do it. I'm just too lazy. But it has a slip pocket in the front, a zippered pocket here. So, and of course this one opens up because this was the back side of the purse. This was initially supposed to be the front side of the purse. Who knows? I was putting in zippers backwards, left and right. And this is a purse I still use occasionally. Still has the slider on it so it can be used crossbody. And generally if I'm going somewhere, it might have one of those other wallets tossed in it. Or even just a coin purse, you know, with my cards and whatnot. Then we got into this bag is called, I think it's called the Glenda bag. And I had made Glenda bag the regular size, and it was a nice bag, but I decided I wanted it a little bit better, a little bit bigger. And not Glenda. The necessary clutch. And I decided you could take the necessary clutch and turn it into a handbag. And that was by making everything a little bit bigger. And I've made a lot of necessary clutches in my past. And, you know, still have a few. I'm cleaning it out as I go. But anyway, the necessary clutch has an area for your cash cards, your cash, and then an area for your cards. And then it also has a zippered center in it. I think the newest version of it also has card slots for this end, this side, the front panel. But I never did update my pattern, so wasn't too worried about it. Magnetic closure again. And then it has the adjustable strap. So, yeah. And the only thing that I did add to this is I added a small pocket on the back that I could slip my cell phone into when I was out and about. This is by far my favorite of that necessary wallet. Making it bigger, and that's simply because it's Minions. Minions! So again, I had made the pocket on the back with the Velcro so that I could slip a cell phone or whatever I wanted in there. I think in this case I just had a notepad in there for some of the things I was doing. But on the inside are the Minions as well. And of course there's that nice slip pocket there, and then of course the pocket for cash, and then the card slots in there as well. But this took a little bit of thinking around how to change that pattern and turn it into a bag that I could carry with me and could carry a lot of things in. So yeah, and of course it does not have an adjustable strap. I just made it one size fits all, or one size fit Jane, because I knew I wasn't going to sell it anywhere. I think this I had used maybe Bosel in it. And it's had some wear and tear because it's been around a while. I did have a second one of these that I had made that did not have this pocket with Velcro, actually had a zippered pocket on it. But I can't remember where it was stored. But wherever it was stored, either chipmunks got into it and chewed on it, you know, like inside the fabric here, and I couldn't fix it, so I wound up just tossing it in the garbage. That happens sometimes. Look at that Band-Aid. But anyway, these have been some good purses, and I've enjoyed making them, enjoyed creating them. Some of them from others' patterns, but a lot of these have been things that I've made on my own. I have made some other bags that I've used, and then I got to a point where I was like, oh, they're way too big. So I wound up, you know, giving them to Goodwill for somebody else. I don't know if they ever got sold when they were, you know, donated to Goodwill. But I figured, you know, it might be an opportunity for someone to pick up a different size purse or something different, unique. Because a lot of those I did in a lot of different flower fabrics and some of the more trendy fabrics that were out there at the time. So anyway, next we'll go to the table and I will show you how I create a bag on paper. See you there. Well, I'm hoping that this will focus. It's kind of rough. I am going to give you a rough idea how I draw them out, my pattern ideas for bags that I've done. Basically, today I am trying to make I want to say a crossbody bag that's fairly small. You know, carries the things I need to, like wallet, maybe a coin purse, my cell phone, keys, maybe some chapstick, that kind of thing. It's not going to carry a whole lot. That's not the idea of the bag. Now, this is my idea. I do want a flap on this bag. So I am going to kind of give you an idea how I start out my rough thoughts on making a bag and how I do draw that. Like I said, I do want a flap. I do want it to be rounded. This will be the pocket where it is open right here. And I might do a slip pocket on the front or the back of that. I'm not real sure. May decide to put a zippered pocket on the back flap so I can have a place to slip my keys, but most likely I'm not going to worry about that. Just going to make it a plain bag. Like I said, with just a slip pocket probably in the front so that when the flap comes down over it, it has a magnetic snap into the slip pocket. But this I had thought, well, maybe I'll put it on the back. But I have decided I am going to put it on the front. So that slip pocket will be in the front. I do want tabs on the side. When I make my tabs, I make them 4 by 4 inches. And then I generally, you know, fold in half, then fold into the half mark on both sides, and then press it, and that makes my tabs. Now, for tabs, I do use a very light interfacing. It is a non-woven interfacing. And usually it's just pieces of something else I've used left over, I fuse in there. To give it a little bit more strength, stability, I do use D-rings. Most of the D-rings that I do pick up are 1 inch. And when you see that, you'll see 1 inch D-rings, but it'll say inner dimensions like 3/8 or something else. I can't remember exactly, but it's fine. If I am going to do a strap with a slider, most sliders are 1 inch. Can get bigger. I don't think I've ever seen anything smaller. If I am making my strap from fabric, I am going to cut that 4 inches by whatever the width of fabric is. Generally 43, 45 inches. Generally that's plenty. I really don't worry about the selvage ends because generally that gets tucked in under your swivel hooks or whatever hooks you're going to use on those. So yeah, don't worry about that. You could also make the strap and just sew it directly into the bag without any tabs on it. If you did that, you would want to calculate if you want it to be a crossbody, what you would need from one shoulder to your hip, that amount times 2. So that kind of gives you a rough idea of what you need, and then you would add, I would add an inch at least to that. So let's say my from the one shoulder across to the other hip, let's say that was 30 inches. So I would double that times 2, would be 60, plus 2 inches, give me 2 inches for that. I generally don't find I need that. Generally I find that this 43 to 46 is perfectly fine for that. I'm just giving you a rough estimate. I have not measured from like my right shoulder to my left hip where I would want the bag to lie, but most likely it's somewhere within 44 inches, 46 inches, including that 2 inch additional. All right, that is the rough picture of it. This piece of paper is an 11 by 14. So that's what I'm going to start with. It's an 11 by 14. And then we will move you up a little bit, change your position just a tad. All right, I don't know where you guys went. What I was telling you is I've taken my 11 by 14 inch piece of paper. I've laid it across this way where it's 11 inches. My 14 inches is up this way. I have taken, I know I do want at the bottom a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I've taken my 1/2 inch mark on my ruler. This is a Fons and Porter ruler that I use a lot. Taking that along the bottom of the edge and just drawn a straight line completely across. Now I do know that I want my bag to be roughly 10 inches tall, but I am going to add a 1/2 inch seam allowance to the top as well. So I'm going to measure down. That would bring that down to the 2. I'm going to measure down my 2.5. Let's get it on a line that's nice and straight. It's kind of hard to do around a camera. Huh. And I am going to measure up that 10.5 inches. From here, I am going to decide that I also want to make sure I have that 1/2 inch seam allowance here. And that brings that to 1/2 inch right there. I am going to draw a line straight down that way. Now, I do know that I want my center part of my bag to be approximately 9 inches. So I am going to make that 10 inches here. So I'm going to place that there and count across 10 inches. And I believe I've already run into a little bit of an issue because I've had that seam allowance there. I need to have another 1/2 inch on this side, which I probably should have measured this way, 1/2 inch in before I put my my line across on the other side. So this is where erasers come in handy, or different colored pencils. And this may not wind up being exactly the way I had planned it, but may just be 10 inches across. Giving me a little bit of a headache today. Then again, that's my own fault, right? So yeah, I am going to take my paper and I'm going to place that there and I'm going to put it on, put my ruler on that 1/2 inch mark all the way up. That is the seam allowance that I do want. Then I will mark up 10.5 inches. And I'll do that on both sides. And normally they tell you to do it in the middle, but I don't always do it in the middle. Now remember, we marked 10.5 inches, so we need to mark down a 1/2 inch, which will give us the right size for the center part of our bag. So that is the basis for the bag as we have it right now. Okay, so I know that when I get to cutting my bag, or if I'm just using, 2 pieces front and back and not worrying about anything else, then this measurement here, when I cut my square, is going to be 11 by 11 inches for that square. Now, I did decide I sort of want to have a flap on it, so I'm going to come up and I'm going to measure 3.5 inches. Now, I should have done it this end. Some rulers aren't exactly the same. I always forget that's got that extra lip there. So I'm going to measure 3.5 inches, draw a line, come along here, do the same thing. As I move my head around the camera, do the same thing. And then I'm going to draw a line straight across. Now, from here I need to decide, do I want a rounded top corner or do I want it to be straight? Now, since we did the 1/2 inch along the side, I am going to go ahead and extend that line up this way on this side as well as this side, because it's going to help give me a couple of marking guides, and that's what I'm looking for. So since I kind of want a rounded flap, I do know that this part is just, I'm not even going to worry about it because it's not going to be a part of it. Now I'm going to bring in my handy dandy rounded edge markers, and that is simply canning jar lid. You can use anything that's round. Now, normally a lot of folks would take it from this edge. You don't want to do that. You want to place it on this edge and also on this edge as well. Find that sweet spot and then round your corner. This will be the inside flap. When it is sewn, even though we have our lovely little marker here. When we cut this, and generally what I do is I don't go over to this side to measure. You could use a protractor to get it absolutely correct. Generally what I do is once I've cut this end off, then when I go to make this measurement, and fold that in half. Then when I go to cut my pattern, generally I just fold it in half here. And then just cut on the line once. And generally what I do is I will cut up to here, come in, then cut this. And that just works for me. A lot of people don't bother doing that, but that's what I choose to do. And that's because I do want my flap to come down over my bag a little bit in here. And I'll probably put a magnetic snap there to help close it. Now here on the front, when you go to cut your piece of fabric, you need to remember your back and the back interfacing are going to be this entire sheet. Your front part of your bag is only from here. It's not the entire flap. So you need to make sure you keep that in mind when you are cutting it. Like I said, this came out the way that I decided, fairly easy. My square will be 11 by 11 wide. I am tall for the front. So I'll need one piece of fabric, whatever my outer fabric is. Either batting or fusible fleece, if you are using that. You could also use just a plain woven interfacing. It won't have a soft feel, but it works just as good. And you could do, you could do that for the whole bag, that whatnot, that kind of thing. Now, when I go to cut my piece here, I have to remember that I have an additional 3.5 inches. So that's going to be, when I cut my bigger piece, it will be 11 by 14.5 inches. That's one interfacing, one outer, and one lining piece. And trust me, I am not taking you into the sewing room to show you this because I'm just going to sew it up later. But that gives me an idea of what I want for my bag. I do know that it'll be this wide. Finishing will be about this tall if everything works out. Now, I am going to shake that down a little bit because I am going to add some box corners. And there are two methods for adding box corners. We know we have 1/2 inch seam allowance on either side and on the bottom. So, if you want 2 inches, you would take your inch mark on the bottom part from where your seams would be. and create your boxed corner. That will give you a nice 2-inch boxed corner. I don't know that I'm going to do that. I don't know what size boxed corners I want just yet. But that's generally how you would determine your depth of your bag. A lot of people will take it from this edge, bottom edge, side edge. It's a little bit shorter, winds up being shorter. So I choose to use it from your seam line. Tip for when you are sewing your bags: once you have cut your piece of fabric, mark your sewing lines on the wrong side of your fabric. Especially if you're brand new to sewing, you're going to find that that works out very nicely. Now, I did give myself 1/2 inch up here for the top. You could actually make that 1/4 inch, but I just chose to do that. Now, when you are cutting your interfacing, if you are using fusible fleece, you do want to keep in mind you don't want the fusible fleece on the where your seam allowance is. So you would cut your bag smaller. You would cut the fusible fleece smaller. You would cut that approximately whatever your 10-inch by 10-inch is. And that will give you a good not 10-inch. I said 10.5, didn't I? I don't know where I'm at. You would cut your fleece 1/2 inch shorter on each side, at least, anywhere from that to much shorter. Since you've got 1 inch seam allowance on both ends, I would actually just cut my fusible fleece 10 by 10, and that would work the best. I don't always do that. Sometimes it just depends on which zippers I'm using. If I'm using a number 5 zipper by the tape and I'm wanting to put in a zipper pocket, I just leave the extra fusible fleece in there because it gives it a little more stability for the zipper. You don't have to. And that's another choice you need to decide. Are you going to make this just a plain bag? You're going to put in pockets on the outside, the inside, whatever it is you're going to do. I do know that on my inside lining, I do want to have a cash pocket. So generally for that, I would give myself about 7 inches. A 7-inch piece. Include your 1/2 inch. My pencil head's coming out. I would include my 1/2 inch around the edges of that. So I would cut a piece of fabric, probably 7.5 inches by about 14 inches. Depending on how many card slots you want to put in it. But at the minimum, it should be 7.5 by 7.5. Because you could just fold up one of those for just a couple of card pockets, that kind of thing. If you want to put in a cash slot and card slots in there. Or you could do add about another 2.5 inch on your length. And that way you could do, I want to say 4 card slots. My mathin' ain't mathin' today. Sorry about that, folks. But those are some, some things that you could decide you wanted to add in a little bit later. But for just a plain basic bag, I would just go with the the measurements that we've got calculated here. You could use freezer paper for your paper. This is just computer paper. Thomas and I used to have a printer that could print off using 11 by 14 inch sheets of paper. The printer I have now does not. It goes 8.5. You can go 8.5 by 14, but it won't do 11. Which I don't understand why they made that choice. But so generally I just use 8.5, 11 in that paper. In that printer. You could use just plain printer sheet. You could use a combination of parchment paper if you wanted to. One thing that I have always used a lot of in the past has been freezer paper, because it has a waxy interior on the back side. So once you get your fabric pieces decided, you could just iron that to your fabric and then cut around using that as your pattern piece. And I've done that a lot of times. But this was just a little bit of how I start to form ideas, to form bags, to make bags. Like I said, the other option that I look at is, do I want to put in a zipper pocket here, backside, those kind of things. But that's for another video. All right, guys, that's just the down and dirty of how I do that. There are many ways to create a bag. There are a lot of YouTubers out there that do give you all kinds of tips and tricks for creating your own bags. So check them out if that's what you're wanting to do. Or just kind of wing it and see how it goes. Now, the only other thing that I do is I don't automatically go cut fabric to cut my bag. I go to the thrift store quite often, and I pick up old sheets. And generally, I get them, when they're 39 cents for the set, hanging on the rack. My Goodwill does that on Sundays and Mondays, and many times I can find, and they may be ugly as sin, and that's fine because I don't care. I'm using them for what I call mock-up bags. The other thing that I'm using them for is to practice free motion quilting, which I will put a piece of felt or even batting. Lots of times I just use felt because it's cheaper. In between it, getting a couple of squares between the two pieces of sheeting so I can practice my free motion quilting. But then for a mock-up, I wouldn't even worry about an interfacing. I would basically just make my outer bag to get an idea if it's feasible, if it's going to work, if I like the size, the finished size of the dimensions, those kind of things. And the way that I would do that is I would cut the back out, the way that I had planned it. I would also cut the front pocket separate, and then I would hem this down to where it came down to that top edge. And then I would sew them together, box the bag, and decide if that's about the size I want, or if I want to make my box corners deeper, less, whatever. So yeah, that's how I do it. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed a little trip into the madness. See you guys soon. Bye.